Now, you're in for a real treat, and it brings me great joy to introduce Peter Williams. Peter is a multifaceted professional who wears many hats, as most founders do, and he's the founder of the New Paradigm Institute. He has extensive experience as an integrative coach, facilitator, trainer, and speaker, and his primary mission is to help people unlock their true potential by becoming highly impactful coaches themselves. After witnessing the powerful transformation effects of a new paradigm, Peter became passionate about exposing the common blind spots that can inhibit high performance, leadership, well-being, and productivity. He combines those insights from his in-depth studies of functional medicine, functional nutrition, and functional breathing with his high-performance coaching techniques to help individuals achieve their goals. Peter is committed to being a catalyst for positive change, working tirelessly to promote a new paradigm when everyone can access information and tools that they need to restore their innate well-being in both mind and body. So to amplify his impact even further, Peter has also founded New Paradigm Integrative Services, which enables him to supervise a team of integrative coaches who are making a difference in the lives of people across the globe. So with all of that, I'm sure you're excited as I am to hear from Peter, and I'd just love to hand over to Peter. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you so very much, Cindy, and thank you everyone for being here tonight, for taking time out of your busy lives. I don't take your time and energy lightly. And my intention tonight is to truly cultivate a transformative impact in each and every one of your lives. And the phrase that I'd love to start off tonight with, for you to ponder on, is that we don't have mental illness. We have broken brains. And we're going to be exploring the potentials of what can underpin a broken brain throughout our session tonight. And what I'd love to do so that you get to understand a little bit more about who I am is to share a little bit about me, a little bit about my story as to who's this guy here who founded the New Paradigm Institute, what inspired him to do so. Because to think that I'd be speaking in front of a room, or a virtual room as we are tonight, like this, a decade ago, 2 decades ago, would not have been imaginable. Growing up, I was very shy. My face would be red, my heart would be racing, my palms would be sweating. And I lived in a chronic state of hyperarousal, as we call it in nervous system terms, for many years of my life. And like many people around the world do, eventually I tried alcohol. And I was like, wow, that stops this feeling. I'll just use more of that stuff. Has anybody ever used alcohol for that before? I know I have, I did. And by utilizing alcohol and those types of substances, obviously it can gateway into other things. And one day I tried marijuana. I was like, wow, this relaxes me for even longer. But what goes up must come down. And eventually I came down to a place where I went to a doctor. I said, can you help? I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand these feelings that are coming up inside of me. Can you please help? And he said, got a chemical imbalance, take these antidepressants. And tonight we're going to discover some of the drivers that can be underneath that. So here I was, teenager, still kept drinking, still kept drugging. Eventually I ended up in a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center. So I've seen the ins and outs of the medical merry-go-round, as I like to call it. I like to share this to show that I'm human, just like everyone else. And within that center, we would speak to one another as though we were broken, like we were delicate pieces of china that needed to be tended to. And that was that paradigm, an old paradigm. What got me out of there was personal training. I love fitness and exercise. That underpins a lot of the health strategies and elements that I'm going to be discussing tonight. Yet, me not understanding how to regulate this vessel, I continued to drink and drug, and I developed an autoimmune disease. Some statistics say that autoimmune diseases have gone up by 100 to 200% over the last decade. Autoimmune disease, where there is chronic inflammation in the body. Now you would think, well, what does this have to do with leadership, business, performance coaching? What's going on in there is a question that you will start to ask with your clients, perhaps yourselves and in your business. So I went and studied natural medicine. I studied naturopathy. I studied health coaching. I had such a passion and I wanted to share that to help people. And I wanted to discover more about my mind. So I studied NLP, hypnotherapy a long time ago, so I can appreciate those things. I did them for some time. And this is what led to the new paradigm. This is what led to my frustration that birthed something new. The level of impact with clients was temporary. A lot of the time it was short term. We would do these techniques. We would have these potent discussions, and then they'd come back and the same problem would be there. And as I was resolving my own health conditions, I remember one of my favorite teachers, and my joy tonight is to not only share what I'm teaching, but to point you to the teachers, the shoulders of the giants that I'm so blessed to stand upon that helped me. And one of those teachers is Dr. Mark Hyman, a functional medicine doctor. Some of you may have heard of him. And he found that people would come to him with digestive problems, and they'd have a bit of mental health stuff on the side. And as he started to heal their guts, their mental health stuff went away. And as I heard this, I started to get curious with my clients and go, here I am trying to do life coaching or business coaching or performance coaching. What's going on in there? What's going on under the surface? And I started to shift things such as nutrition, such as blood sugar regulation, such as movement, such as functional breathing, which is something I'm so excited to talk to you about tonight as well. And clients would tell me stories like, Peter, I have my mojo back. Finally, I have it back. And these were leaders of companies. These were project managers. These were entrepreneurs. And it was thinking, what's under the surface? What's truly going on in there? And after I had enough human beings with long-term transformation, something in me said, I am here to share this with the world. And tonight, it is my privilege, it is my honor, it is my true blessing to share my life's work with each and every one of you. So what I'd love to ask, so that I can provide a bit of context and deliver it to you, I'd love you if you can type into the chat box what sort of coaching you do, if you are a coach, what sort of business you're in, like whatever is appropriate. If I can hear from you, is there a particular niche of client that you work with? Because with this, I'm going to share client case studies, client stories, so I can make it real to you. And I want to interact with you versus just speak at you as well. So I'd love to hear. Yeah. As a leader, when you're working with leaders, you'll start to see the distinctions of one of the slides, which I'm actually going to show you. So let's get into it. All right, let's go. Check this out. So I've got a presentation. There are some outcomes, and Cindy spoke to it. I want to educate you in regards to blind spots that hinder performance, leadership, entrepreneurship, and productivity. I want to provide a deeper understanding of the nervous system. Now, this as a leader, as a business owner, as a coach, I know I primarily worked with top-down regulation strategies. We can consider NLP as a top-down. We're going to change the thinking to change the experience. But what I'm looking forward to sharing with you tonight is bottom-up. How can we shift someone's experience with the breath, with the nervous system, with the body? As a leader, how can we understand the natural adaptive behaviors that we engage in as animals, so that, as you'll see with misconceptions, rather than they're so rude or they're lazy, you start to go, are they rude or lazy, or what's going on in there? And this creates the space for a client that we're coaching to be able to respond rather than react, to see that there is that natural reaction of, that hurt what that person did. And then you understand why. You're going to be discovering the intangible, the invisible factors that obscure performance, communication, and well-being. And then what I want you to leave with tonight, rather than just information, my highest value is impact and quality. I want your lives to be permanently shifted with an insight or an understanding as a result of tonight, where your world will never look the same. And how can you utilize functional medicine, functional breathing, functional nutrition to generate exponential impact operating with a new paradigm? Now, one element is that, yes, you're not particularly health coaches. So if I'm not a health coach, how can I use this? This is about understanding. It's the capacity to refer out. It's the capacity to upskill. And I want to provide you with beautiful books that you will sink your teeth into, as well as teachers. So again, as you're faced with a client, the question of, is it that? Or what could be going on in there? So let's go on for a ride. This is the 3 pillars of the new paradigm method. I guess to give a bit of context, I'm sure many of you have invested a lot into yourselves. I've invested over $10.25 million, and I don't say that to impress you. I say that to impress upon you. I love learning, and I love learning this stuff. Teachers, coaches, courses, mentors, and I blended it all together into the new paradigm method. Psychological system is the brain, as well as how our experience is created. Biological system is largely what we're looking at tonight, so that you will be upskilled and have an advantage in the marketplace. Because if we think about the elevator of your understanding, we're elevating you up tonight so you see a different world. And systems and skill sets, I'll give you a bit of a bonus at the end, but that's fundamental. We can provide, I saw in my experience of the medical merry-go-round, going to gastroenterologists, rheumatologists, sleep specialists, osteopaths, physiotherapists, you name it. I went to them all. At times, they couldn't give me answers. At times, they provided great insight. I couldn't implement it because I didn't have the system or the skill set. So I've seen these 3 ingredients lead to long-term change. Now, this is the body. We've got the nervous system. Think about the body like a car. We've got the electricity that runs through the car to power it. We've got the respiratory system, the breath. You're going to learn some things tonight that why it excites me is with all of the clients over the years, you want to know the most common feedback I get? Why hasn't anyone told us this before? Because we're operating in an old paradigm at the moment. The endocrine system is hormones. You've got the digestive system, which I love. You're going to learn a lot about that. That's the fuel tank. How do we fuel the vehicle? The immune system and the cardiovascular system. And I'd like to lead this with a story. So some of you may have heard of an obstetrician named Semmelweis back in the day. So he would help deliver babies. And back then, it was normal for 18% of mothers to pass away from something they called pregnancy fever. Now, Semmelweis's colleague, who was a man, he passed away of the pregnancy fever. It was like, but he's a man. What's going on? What have I missed? And he discovered that no one was sterilizing instruments. No one was washing their hands as they would move from surgery to delivering babies. Now, we hear that and go, that's absurd. What were they doing? But they were doing the best with what they knew. That was their paradigm. And why I talk about a new paradigm is I see that there's a lot of innocent suffering going on, operating with old paradigms in relation to working with people these days. So I'm going to check in with you guys in a moment. But what I'd love to show you is some of these. So I learned these in NLP. I learned these in psychotherapy when I trained that as well. You know, things such as, you know, this client, they just don't want it. Or, you know, they're not taking responsibility, or, you know, they're at effect, they're making excuses, or they're just not ready. Their unconscious mind is holding on. They're not ready, or, they're unmotivated and lack discipline. Now, am I saying none of that is true? No. But am I saying that's absolute all the time? Of course not. This conversation came up in the institute that I was teaching last year, one of the cohorts. A gentleman said these statements because he was in an older paradigm. Some clients want this. And I said, cool, I hear you. But I asked the question, have you tested their bloods? Have you tested their digestive system? Have you assessed their breathing as to whether it's functional or not? Have you tested their brain to see how it's firing, if there's coherence? Have you tested their circumstances to see if they have co-regulation from people around them? Have you looked at how much coffee they're having, what they're eating, how they're sleeping, And a lot of these things were missed. So am I saying none of these things are true? No, but what's going on in there? Because the brain, when I learned about neuroscience, the brain will just immediately go, they don't want it enough. And it's questioning that thought of, do they not want it enough? Or are they not firing? What's going on in there? So guys, what I'd love to do is just check in and hear from you so far. Any comments or thoughts so far? Feel free to unmute if there's one thing that's been interesting, one thing that's piqued your interest so far. I'd love to hear from just one of you. Gopal, welcome.
Yeah, you use the word effective in one of the points. I couldn't just understand the context of that. Can you please explain?
Sure. So great question. In NLP, it's a philosophy of, if you're at effect, you blame, you complain, you use excuses, you come up with reasons. When you're at cause, you take responsibility, you create results, you create solutions. Yeah. So that effect is basically someone, yeah, there you go, Cindy, below the line, above the line, or victim. Like, victim's quite a crude word, but sometimes we go, oh, they're playing the victim, but are they? Does that answer your question, Gopal?
Okay, what I understand from the concept of effective is that that's the right thing for us to do. That's what effective actually means to me. Is it in that context only you're using the word, or is it different?
Well, in the context you just shared, to be effective is to be good at something. Yeah. But in this philosophy, it's saying you're at effect of life. So you're at effect of life versus taking responsibility for your life.
I understand.
So it's just language, but it's a good point, a good question.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? I saw a comment. Thanks for engaging, guys. Monica, we can fall into making assumptions regarding clients, lack of progress. Yes, thank you for sharing. And there's a real innocence. Like, it's not like the brain comes up with these thoughts in a judgmental way. The brain's just making an initial assessment. As we've got a client in front of us, it's like, oh, it's this. It's questioning, is it that or something else? And are we ready for something that you may have never seen before that is going to open your minds up? Let me see a show of hands. Yeah, you ready? Cool. All right, check this out. So these are brains. And you're like, what are we looking at here? What is this? So if we look at the picture on the left-hand side, when we consider the brain as an organ, it requires particular levels of blood flow. This is invisible. We can't see it. The brain doesn't have receptors for pain. If there's inflammation in the brain or even head trauma, sometimes there's no sensations. And I'll give you a story. So one that comes to mind is I work with elite athletes as well. Had an elite athlete, football player, we'll say the name is Rob. And Rob came and his moods were fluctuating up and down, energy, fatigue going down, unmotivated. And I asked him, have you had many head knocks? Like, have you actually had many knocks? And what you'll find, everyone, is that people go, oh, not really. And as you inquire a bit more, it was like, well, actually, on the field last year, I had 3 times where I got hit and I forgot where I was and I literally got lost on the field. Now, that's a red flag, but it's invisible. So I could have looked and gone, he's a resistant client. He doesn't want it enough. He's lazy. Drugs and alcohol, I had a good go, as many people do. And this, basically, if you look at this picture here, this is a healthy brain that is full of appropriate blood flow to all of the different parts. And we can see it's nice and full here on the left-hand side and full here. And we can see what happens with drug and alcohol or lifestyle factors. So unhealthy junk food, infections, as I'm going to show you, but this is invisible. So we look at the deterioration of blood flow. These aren't holes. What they do is they inject a particular kind of dye. It's nuclear in nature. And what happens as that dye travels through the vessels of the brain and they scan it, they're able to determine where blood is flowing and where it isn't. And there's stories of innocent children, and it touches my heart to hear innocent suffering being resolved, like 7-year-olds that people are going, oh, they're psychotic, they're a little, pardon the French, a little shit, we've got to put them on medication. And people such as Dr. Raymond, which is a giant, who I stand on the shoulders of, would say, let's get their brain looked at. Let's get their brain scanned. They scanned this little guy's brain and they found that if we look here, temporal lobe, the left-hand side, there was a huge hole. And that's indicative that the temporal lobe, which has to do with mood stability, it had no blood flow. And they scanned further and found there was a tumor there. But this little guy was living with people going, he's rude, we've got to put him into a mental hospital. Now, am I against that? No, but I'm saying for us to continually come from a place of what could be going on in there. Now, in Australia, if you're in Australia, I know we're all around the world, America SPECT scans are available. In Australia, they are for some people regarding a particular referral. But the next type of testing we can have is EEG type of scans where we do neurofeedback. That can be another way to assess brain function. But we can see how diverse the question of what's going on in there is. It's been shown that there's several different types of ADD. So one person could be provided a medication that makes them worse, and another person could be provided that medication and they're great. So it's one of my favorite philosophies that one man's food or one man's way of being can be another man's poison. So it's fascinating to see. Yeah, Sharon, inquiry and curiosity. And Cindy, imagine what vaping is doing to our youth. Yeah, 100%. All of these toxins, like look at these ones, guys. This brain scan, and I'm going to get to what you can actually do about it. But one thing that I'm passionate about in the Institute and that I have seen as we zoom out has really impacted my clients and impacted the practitioners that I've taught. I call it DIMU. It's an acronym, DIMU. It stands for deep, insightful, meaningful, understanding. And I find when I've taken the time to provide DIMU, deep, insightful, meaningful understanding to a client, their world can change. All of a sudden, they're going out and doing the recommendations without me having to make them do it or have to be hard on them. Well, what does that mean? Deep. It's really hit. They've gone, oh, insightful. They've had a sight from within. They've seen it for themselves. Meaningful is it's connected to their goals and outcomes and what's important to them. It's not just philosophizing at them. And understanding the dots of being connected to their symptoms, their experience, to functional medicine and science. So I imagine in your practices, in your businesses, you operate with something like DIMU. You probably just don't call it that, right? You educate deeply, you provide insight, as to why you're making a recommendation versus just making a recommendation at times. Yeah, sometimes we do, but Dimu can change the game. That's why tonight I'm doing a lot of Dimu with you. So checking in, who's enjoying this? Let me see a show of hands just to see we're here. The energy's good. Yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate it. Awesome. You're rocking it. This is my life's work. Like this is what I do all the time. Like I just get to share what I love with you. So we've got traumatic brain injuries, TBI. I spoke about that athlete. We've got post-traumatic stress disorder. One of my favorite quotes is, it's not about what happened. It's about what happened in the nervous system. And the nervous system and the brain hold the memories of trauma and challenges of the past. So how can we support the brain back to good health and the nervous system back to regulation? Now, some of the leaders I've worked with, CEOs, etc., lifestyle is out of balance, weight comes on. We've seen in the science that with weight going up and obesity, brain size can come down. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, before I knew this philosophy, I was really frustrated with this client. It's like, why aren't they doing the recommendations? What's going wrong? We tested high blood pressure, blood sugars all over the place. And we forget that the brain as an organ needs energy, it needs oxygen, it needs glucose. So sometimes it's okay to refer out to test to identify what's going on in there. Because these pictures, I like the phrase that you'll see in a moment. It's neuroanatomical self-awareness. What does that mean? Well, we're making the intangible tangible, the invisible visible. When somebody sees a picture of a brain with the symptoms that they're experiencing, it moves from them being broken, flawed, and something wrong with them. It moves from the problem being inherent in them to it's up for grabs. There's something we can do. You're not unique. You're not flawed. You're not broken. And that's one of my biggest passions on this planet. I'm sure you guys resonate with that as well. You see the wholeness in your clients. You see that they are well. So I lived in a building full of mold last year for about 6 months. Has anybody ever heard of mold? Let me see a show of hands, because it's not really commonly known. Yeah. Some people go, oh, mold, you just put a bit of bleach on it. After being in an environment with mold, my memory was gone, my moods were going up and down, my concentration was gone. And then I discovered that the place flooded when I moved in Manly. For those of you in Manly, you may have experienced it. But there was a lot of flooding. And then I heard stories of people with mold where they'd move into a property with mold, and all of a sudden their moods would be going down, they'd be depressed, their personality would change, but it's invisible. It's invisible. So people around them go, you're being so rude. This picture reminds me of a story. So another story, I love stories. So a husband and wife came into the practice because the husband was really angry. He was an angry guy. And basically the practitioner was sitting with the husband, and he said, he did a brain scan. He said, do you do drugs? Like, have you done drugs and alcohol throughout your life? And the guy was like, not at all. Practitioner looks at the wife and he's like, is he telling the truth? She was like, yeah. And he said, well, when did the anger and the outburst start? 6 years ago. What changed 6 years ago? I started my new job. What was your new job? Varnishing. Varnishing in a factory. So this is another example of an invisible, right? They were going to break up, like, oh, he's such an angry guy. Get him on a brain healing program and his behavior is better. And Sharon, yes, childhood trauma, it really is something to be honored and to explore it from a new paradigm as well. And consciousness is a great word. I like to connect consciousness with an elevator, that we have an elevator of consciousness, and the more that we learn, the higher our levels of consciousness go. Yeah, the varnishing. if there's one thing where you leave today and someone's sitting in front of you and their behavior isn't clicking or they're not progressing, they're not moving, and you just stop and go, what else could be going on in there? Rather than what's going on in their personality. Because I worked at level of mindset and personality. That stuff's gold. You can move mountains, but it's just considering the person as a whole, being open-minded about the why. Like what I loved in natural medicine, it's a philosophy to consider. It's called constructionism versus reductionism. Constructionism is where we consider the whole person. We consider all the intricate different parts. Reductionism is we just look at one area and say, that's the problem, let's focus on that. So an example of reductionist is an immunologist. So an immunologist will only look at the immune system, whereas constructionist, and some immunologists would look at the gut, would look at hormones, etc. They're going to look outside of the box. And yeah, Anand, very much. I'm geeking out to show you into addressing the brain as well. So yeah, constructionist versus reductionist. Again, why do I love you learning this? It upskills you, it increases your value, increases your wisdom in the marketplace for you to go out and serve human beings. So let us continue. These are the functions of the brain. Like when we consider blood flow and a lack of neural activity, one study, and I'll take you through it, provided we're flowing for time, which is great. Heart Math Institute, I'll be taking you through it shortly. What we see is the brain is like an orchestra. So there's the conductor, there's the violinist, there's the drummers. And as blood flow changes, or there's chronic stress, the orchestra starts playing out of time. So the conductor's trying to get the brain into line, but the violinist's off by themselves, the drummers off by themselves. That's called incoherence of the brain. And that happens over periods of chronic stress, emotionally, chemically, and physically. So of the many tools that I want to provide to you tonight, supporting the development of coherence, it's scientifically backed. All the things I'm sharing, I geek out on science. Where is the evidence to support true, impactful, long-term change? Yeah. And in photography, additive, subtractive. Yes. Thank you, Gopal. The same process for your theory. Yeah. Yep. We're all speaking similar languages. Now, anterior cingulate gyrus, you can consider this as the gear stick. Have you ever had a client who gets stuck on looping thoughts? Anybody ever experienced that before? Like they keep looping and they can't get out of the loop. Yeah. So that can be indicative of that part of the brain with a lack of activation, a lack of blood flow, etc. And you can, what you'll find, team, is that you show this to someone and they go, I've got a lot of that. And it's an insight moment. Limbic system is the deeper emotional brain. Basal ganglia is a sense of peace in the system. But the one that I like is it's neuroanatomic self-awareness. Again, you're not going to go out and be a health coach unless you're a wellness coach. Oh, yeah. But you're going to have an insight as to where you can point people to. Prefrontal cortex is one of the biggest ones. Have you ever had a client who procrastinates? Have you ever procrastinated yourself? Yeah. So prefrontal cortex can be the element that is involved in forethought, monitoring impulsiveness, being aware of thought. So great story, Gary Busey. Has anybody ever seen Gary Busey, the actor? He's got really big teeth. He's like a funny comedian type of guy. You may have. So Gary Busey would be on TV, and after quite some time, they're like, he is so rude. Like, he is so inconsiderate. He lacked empathy. He would just say things that were really inappropriate. He went and had a brain scan done, and his brain was falling to bits. They asked him about his childhood. What happened during your childhood? He fell off a tree. He played NFL. So he had a lot of head trauma. And yeah, there you go. Yeah, Cindy's got it there. Thank you, Cindy. Yeah. So if you take a look at him and you see him there, he's an interesting looking guy. This poor gentleman was seen as there's something wrong. He's so rude. He's broken. His brain was not firing. And after a brain healing program, which is modifiable lifestyle factors, which we're going to be looking at, his personality started to change. Because one of the traps is that personalities are fixed. It's unchangeable. What if it's up for grabs? Would love to hear from you, Gopal.
I had just a question in my mind. I thought I could sort it out, or is it coming later? How do we deal with the bipolar people? You see,
Bipolar?
Bipolar, yeah. They shift their ground. They're saying something and then suddenly they change their mind. And so as a coach, sometimes, we are in a dilemma. Should I stick to my point of view or should I keep on varying according to his moods and tendencies? Have I made my click clear?
Yeah. So it's taking into account. So I'll speak to this presupposition, Gopal, to speak to that. In NLP, there's a presupposition where they'll say everybody's doing the best with the resources they have available. But to speak to your point, what I created in the Institute is everybody is doing the best with the level of physiology, understanding, and skills that they have available. So why I'm pointing to this, Gopal, is I'm not going to diagnose bipolar, etc., but I'm curious as to things such as blood sugar fluctuations, inflammation of the brain. I've even spoken about neuroinflammation. So to answer your question, at times there is the capacity to test before you guess. Now you'd be like, well, what do I test for? I'm going to show you some tests shortly. And the other thing I would point to, Gopal, is that within each and every one of us, there is an inner wisdom that is typically guiding us from moment to moment to calibrate to the client. And you can have testing done to assess what's occurring. But I heard, do I stick with my point or do I kind of acknowledge where they're at with their fluctuations? And if I got your question correctly, it's context dependent. It's going to change from moment to moment. But does that provide you with some thoughts and some things to kind of simmer on with what I just shared?
I can share a typical story, which is actually happening without mentioning names, dealing with a client lady. And so relationship issue between the husband and wife, which is normal to deal with for many of us. So I said, how would it help if every morning you were to take the lead to kiss him? She said, yeah, that's simple. I'll do it. If that will make a difference. Then I think when we were about to close the session, she said, no, I don't think I'm capable of doing that kind of things. Why should I be doing it? Because he's the one who is, who's not agreeing to my way of thinking or my needs and things like that. So why should I be doing that? Why should I take the lead? This kind of thing. This is actually happening. So I think I hope I made my point clear.
Has anyone ever had a client share that or a human in your life? Let me see a show of hands. Anybody ever had a client do that? Of course. I call that humaning. Like, I don't know. One of my philosophies is, oh, look at him humaning. What I see, Gopal, and then we'll continue flowing, is a lack of potential dimu, of a deep, insightful, meaningful understanding as to the true change that can occur from the recommendation or the true consequences that will occur if they don't change. And as you would see with clients, it's just staying in that loving place and revisiting over time. So great question, great point. We'll continue flowing, and I appreciate you sharing. It's really cool. I love your background as well. It makes you want to be on holidays. Well, I'm on holidays, so I could just enjoy it. Thank you for sharing, Gopal. So we consider the brain, and this is fascinating. I love it, Cindy. I geek out on this stuff so much. So we'll talk about prefrontal cortex, temporal lobe, that little 7-year-old who was going to be put into a mental health institution. there was a tumor growing on his temporal lobe. Once they took it out, beautiful little boy was back. How many human beings are out there with alterations in function of their brain? One of my biggest passions, and why I love this, is you get to diversify how you can help people. I work with business owners, and one of their children was diagnosed, they now call it neurodiverse, for autism, and they throw ADD in there. Like, cool, respect diagnosis and that. As I looked further into the functional medicine, I started to find that what they've been showing is with autism, for example, because you'll find a lot of leaders and high performers, they can have elements, there's a spectrum of autism. When they would do MRIs on the brains of kids with autism, they'd find their brains were larger. Why was that? Inflammation. They found their brains were inflamed. What they've also found is that throughout fetal development, with a mother in stress, with an activated immune system, that can change the cell function in the brain of the child, which presents with neurodiversity. And to simplify it, it means that they can have more of a tendency towards inflammation of the brain. And what's inflammation come from? It's to one of your beautiful points before, like, what do we do about it? We're getting to that. We want to reduce unnecessary chronic inflammation. Yeah. So with that, how are we traveling for energy? We're ready to continue for a bit, and then we'll do some breath. Yeah, you with me? Cool. Then we'll do some breath. Like, I've got like 50 different breathing things we can do. We'll do some breath to create some clarity of the brain, and then we'll continue on. So Dr. Daniel Amen, thank you. Homage to you. I've trained with him. He is incredible. These are resources that I invite you to go and to gather Dimu yourself. The End of Mental Illness. It doesn't talk about learning to cope or to live with, no, the end. The Ultramind solution is from one of his colleagues, Dr. Mark Hyman, another functional medicine doctor, where we're seeing that, and I'll go back, you're writing it down. We're seeing that the simple way to defeat depression, overcome anxiety, and to sharpen your mind, to see that it's broken brains. This one is exceptional for the next slide that I'm going into. The anti-anxiety solution is largely around, obviously, nutrition and the impact on mood, as well as amino acid therapy. So you're going to have this on the slides, team, and in the recording. So all good. We'll move on. You'll have it. So end of mental illness, anti-anxiety food solution, Ultramind solution. Yeah. Look at this. Now, a bit of science again, because I geek out on science, but I'll explain it. Now, serotonin on this left-hand side, that's a chemical messenger, a neurotransmitter. It transmits signals through the nervous system, and serotonin transmits signals of confidence, self-esteem, focus, calmness. Now you'd go, well, what are we looking at here then? Well, I want to bring your attention to tryptophan. Now, fancy big words, I'll simplify them. How do we get tryptophan? Food, protein. Amino acids that come from protein are the soil to actually grow into the chemistry of our brain, to feel good mood, to feel esteem, to feel confidence. Yeah. B6 is a form of a water-soluble vitamin which we get in our diet. Now, you go, oh, do I just take a B6 supplement? It comes back to test before you guess. Now, what does this have in relation to the right-hand side? We look at the gut. There's some functional medicine doctors, such as Dr. Gundry, who has worked with tens of thousands of people. He mentions, if you have mental illness, I very rarely find there isn't gut stuff going on. And what is this image here? Well, this is a healthy lining of a gut. So you can imagine what lines the digestive system, and this is what helps the brain. So it's connecting, right? How do I help the brain? Helping the gut. So know that this is, we're getting to the how. In the gut, there's these finger-like projections, and they're meant to be like basically firm, strong, like this position. And these tight junctions are meant to stay closed, with food moving through the actual cells themselves. But what happens, and I've seen this so much over the years, I'll zoom out. I had a string of like 10 dads who were leaders, and these dads, these fathers, COVID created a lot of stress in business for many people in leadership. We can agree on that. And I just saw a string of men who would come to me and go, Peter, what's wrong with me? Like, I just feel on edge. I feel nervous. I just don't feel right. And what happens after periods of chronic stress is that the protective mechanisms of the digestive system become suppressed. And as those natural protective mechanisms become damaged, we start to get something known as leaky gut, or in functional medicine, it's known as increased intestinal permeability. Now, to simplify it, you'll be like, what does that mean? Well, it means, number one, we start to get atrophy of these little finger-like projections where food is meant to be absorbed. This also means that enzymes aren't produced effectively. Has anyone ever had a food intolerance before, or things like that, or know someone with a food intolerance? This is where the machinery to break down food can be largely created. But if it's damaged, the machinery to break down food isn't being produced, and they're having food intolerances and things like that. Now, we also find that larger particles of food that would normally be, filtered down through here start to move into the bloodstream. And that drives things such as nutrient malabsorption, because the body moves into a chronic state of inflammation. Inflammation is, if you sprain your ankle, it will be red, it will be puffy, it will be in pain. But this inflammation that moves throughout the body is low level, it's undetected, and it starts to drive a myriad of diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. A lot of these autoimmune diseases, they talk about it originating in the gut. Because here's an innocent mistake humans will make, and you can write this down. We're not just what we eat, we're what our body can do with what we eat. We're not just what we eat, we're what our body can do with what we eat. And that's why repairing this type of environment with the support of a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor, which you create, I've loved creating collaborations with them. I collaborate and refer out. And the client's like, wow, you really care. Like, you've considered this. You're not just, take away, not just coaching mindset. That can be life transforming, or leadership, business, etc. But wow, you've considered all elements in an integrated plan. Because I'm coaching the body, the brain, and their world with the skills that they're navigating. So we find there's blood-brain barrier breach. This is where I've spoken about inflammation of the brain. And what that means is that we're not getting the nutrients to build serotonin. So a doctor lovingly will say, you got a chemical imbalance, you need medication. They're right. You do have a chemical imbalance. Where's it coming from? And typically we find a correlation here. Dopamine is one of the primary neurotransmitters for motivation and desire and focus. And that comes from tyrosine. I've had clients at times supplement tyrosine, and all of a sudden their focus is back. Now, was that a root cause resolution? No, that was an invitation and a recommendation, because a lot of the things that I've done with you tonight, I do with the client for them to go investigate themselves to make an informed decision. I'm not particularly recommending you need to do this, this, that. I teach them, I point them to books, and all of a sudden they're going out and finding answers themselves. Yeah. And GABA, this is one of the primary neurotransmitters that leads to relaxation and peace. So this is a cool one as well. So what I'd love to do, let's do some breath. I'm going to support you with the breathing practice that's going to increase levels of oxygen. So when we look at functional breathing shortly, one of our primary gases is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide leads to the release of oxygen into the cells. If we have low carbon dioxide, we have low oxygen moving into cells. Cells are what give us life. So with this breath practice we're about to do, it's going to increase carbon dioxide, which means you'll have more oxygen going into every cell of your body, and you'll have a bit more energy. Very simple. I'll demonstrate. Just watch me, then we'll do it together. So just watch me. I'm demonstrating. Don't do it. So all you'll be doing, you'll be chilling out. I go, all right, guys, just chill. All breathing through the nose. And then I'll go, okay, natural breath in through your nose. Natural breath out. Pinch the nose, hold. And you're going to hold for 5 seconds, and then we'll release, and I'll guide you. And you'll notice a gentle energizing and clarity of your brain as more oxygen comes in. So with that, feel free to close your eyes if it's comfortable. I'll do it as well. So eyes closed, feet planted on the floor, imagining a piece of string tied to the top of your head, pulling you towards the ceiling, bringing your awareness to the nose. Just starting to observe the breath, primarily breathing through your nose. And when you're ready, I'll invite you to take a natural breath in through your nose, natural breath out through your nose. Pinch your nose with your fingers, hold your nose at the breath. 4, 3, 2, 1. Release, breathing through your nose. Circulating carbon dioxide. Continue breathing through the nose. And again, when you're ready, natural breath in through your nose. Natural breath out through your nose. Pinch your nose. Hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release, breathing natural. Letting go, circulating oxygen through the nose. Eyes closed. Doing well, team. We'll do 2 more. When you're ready, taking a natural breath in through your nose. Natural breath out through your nose. Pinch your nose. Hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release, breathing natural, circulating carbon dioxide through the body. Now, last one, when you're ready, taking a natural breath in through your nose, natural breath out through your nose, pinch your nose, hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release, breathing natural, circulating carbon dioxide through your body. Just noticing how you feel. When you're ready, taking all the time you need, staying in a state of peace, allowing your eyes to gently crack open as you come on back and become aware of your sense of sight. So you may have had a change, you may have had nothing, it may be very subtle. What we're doing is whenever we hold the breath, levels of carbon dioxide increase. And when we have more carbon dioxide, more oxygen is released from red blood cells into the cells of the body. Typically for people, it's energized, or for some people, it can feel, relaxed. Other people, it can even be a bit of a detox because so much oxygen is flooding where it doesn't normally go. Yes, Cindy, normal. We'll get into the yawning. The body has a natural set point for carbon dioxide. When we increase it, the body's like, get it out. That's abnormal. So with that, we're ready to continue. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Awesome. Let's do it, team. Doing well. So this, the gut, we've got resources around that. How do we shift this? Nutrition, stress management, breath, testing. So I want to show you some case studies of why I love testing. Now, this was a client who came to me, a business owner, a leader, and We'll call him Jeff. Jeff thought that he had social anxiety. Jeff thought that he had trouble with eye contact. And I tried mindset, did breath. I checked, has he done testing? And I was like, yeah. But then we did get testing. We found so what this test is, I'll be blunt, you poo in a cup, you scoop the poo, you send it overseas, and they give you results on it. It's great. It's one of my favorite tests. I love it because it just gives us direct answers. The intangible becomes tangible. The invisible becomes visible. So we found high levels of zonulin. Now, what does that mean? Well, zonulin, if I bring you back over here, zonulin has to do with the tight junctions here. When we have elevated levels of zonulin, that can be a clinical correlation that leaky gut is going on. But you would look at this guy, it looks like a normal guy. He just looks healthy, like no one would really think anything of it. So a lot of people, like, I've had clients, and they'll go, but my gut's fine. I go to the toilet fine. There's never any issues. It can be asymptomatic. This doesn't mean you have any symptoms in your digestive system. The symptoms can be elsewhere, particularly in the brain. What we found with this gentleman as well, full of parasites. Parasites can come from water, from food, from all around the world. This gentleman had been through a period of chronic stress. Chronic stress suppresses the immune system. Then parasites and things like that can come into the system. What does a parasite do? Generates inflammation. It saps the system of nutrients. It can even stimulate and create intrusive thoughts. There's people, it's like, oh, he's got intrusive thoughts. Yeah, the parasite is driving the intrusive thoughts. Parasites can stimulate the stress response. We also found overgrowth of these are known as opportunistic bacteria. So bacteria are like the little soldiers in the gut. And there can be naughty guys that come in that aren't meant to be there, and they cause a bit of havoc. So this is a test. We had clear feedback. There's no guessing. It's test before you guess. I'm going to be pointing you to how you get these tests. You just refer out to a naturopath. I am essentially 2 months away from a training being completed where I'll be able to send these tests out myself. And that's known as a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. I'll be getting the testing done for every client, but referring out's great. So E. coli, these are known as healthy soldiers, the good bacteria, low. We want to have them higher for brain function, energy, immune function, etc. This gives us tangible results. Now, the final thing I want to show. This test, I love. It's called an organic acids test. You pee in a cup and you send the cup away and they analyze it. And what we found with this gentleman is B vitamins are largely correlated. Like they come from greens, vegetables, nuts, meats, things like that. They're largely involved with mood, energy, immune function. These all being high is indicative of his body urinating out a lot of the precursors in the cycle of producing these nutrients, which is a bad thing. That means his body's burning through this stuff. He's not getting his nutrients. Eating a good diet, living a good lifestyle, but there's things going on inside. This one in particular has to do with tryptophan. Tryptophan, again, being the precursor to serotonin, the neurotransmitter of confidence, eye contact, feeling safe. And this poor gentleman for years had thought that there was something seriously wrong with his personality. We look inside and there's a lot going on we can address. So we test before we guess. Guys, is that not amazing to discover? Let me see a show of hands. I know it fires me up. Yeah. Like, so I want you to have access to the testing for you to be able to like geek out on yourself and then be able to support others. Because when we test before we guess, we make the intangible tangible, the invisible visible. So that's brain chemistry. That's the gut. That's how we test it. This is from the training I was talking about, metabolic chaos, which essentially underlies chronic disease is skyrocketing. And you'll find with clients, is it their personality or is it their body? Like if the body is like a car and the tires are flat, the fuel tank is punctured, you can give them the greatest insights and analogies. If the windscreen's covered with mud and they're not progressing, you're like, why? Because the car it's not functioning. We've got to get the car support. So we consider all aspects of the person, their immune system, digestive system, detoxification of the liver. With this gentleman, his liver was tanked after decades of alcohol. Energy, he was fatigued all the time. Autonomic nervous system is where, in the next segment, you're going to learn how you can support someone with that. Oxidative stress is aging. So gray hairs, things like that, and then hormones. So it's looking at the person as a whole. You're going to have this in the slide, and I encourage you to check these guys out. Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. There's podcasts where they educate around this. And even if you're not becoming a health coach, you can have insight to add value and to diversify yourself in the marketplace. And the body whispers until it screams. Yeah. So that's that segment. That's the body. We're talking about mind-body coaching. This next slide, ladies and gentlemen, I've shown this hundreds, if not thousands of times. This can transform someone's life. Because you show them that and you ask them, does any of that look familiar? And they go, wow, I thought it was just me. You go, it was never just you. That's what nervous systems do. We lost sight. We thought a few decades ago that there was only two branches of the nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic. But we discovered a third branch about 2 decades ago, a man named Dr. Stephen Porges. And this, in terms of coaching, adding this in is a game changer, because for leadership, for business consulting, for career coaching, this philosophy of the nervous system can point to why humans behave the way they behave. Now, I'll simplify it. Social engagement system. Right now, mine's firing because I feel safe, I feel fun. Social engagement system runs from the heart to the voice box. So is the ventral vagal branch. So heart, voice box, ears, eyes, mouth. When someone's social engagement system is active, you'll see their smile here. If they're in sympathetic and the social engagement's not, they'll smile and it's this kind of, there's no activation here. Like, oh, this poor human, look, they're in fight or flight. Social engagement system also leads to our ability to hear people's voices. Someone going, God, they're rude, they weren't listening. I've seen it with CEOs all the time because they're in fight or flight. Their ears, what happens when the social engagement system's off, the muscles of the middle ear tighten because the ears start to listen for low tone frequencies, for threat. It's not social engagement. The ears aren't listening for high tone frequencies of people's voices. Autism has been shown as a large dysregulation of the social engagement system. There's protocols where they encourage and develop the social engagement system, and they find that all of a sudden they're able to make eye contact again. So the social engagement system is fundamental. It is also the branch that allows us to connect. The amount of clients going, Peter, why can't I connect? Like, I'm with people I love. I just want to be natural. And then, like the breath I did with you then, carbon dioxide stimulates the social engagement system. So being able to educate a bottom-up practice, being able to operate with a bottom-up practice means that we can activate the social engagement system. Sometimes trying to logically think about it doesn't necessarily activate it. Yeah, go ahead, Gopal.
One point, Peter. I misheard. I don't know. I couldn't hear properly. Not misheard. I couldn't understand that. It was somehow it meant to me, came to me, low frequency modality of listening is connected with the threat syndrome. Have I understood it correctly, or is something missing?
No, good question. I'll share again. So when the social engagement system is on, the muscles of our middle ear loosen and they open up to listen for high tone frequencies. A high tone frequency is people's voices. Now, it's a survival adaptation because what sounds do lions make? That's a low tone frequency. So when the social engagement's off, the muscles of the middle ear change function to be listening for low tone frequencies because our ancestors stayed alive surveying for threat. So that's what's occurring with it, to answer your question. Great question. Thank you for asking.
Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. So the freeze response. What happens after somebody being in sympathetic for quite some time, which you could consider the accelerator, the handbrake comes on. Burnout. Has anyone ever experienced burnout? I had a client with burnout. Yeah, all the time. That's why they come. So I've had CEOs, they're in sympathetic all the time. Go, 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 go. This is the brake. The social engagement system is meant to be the healthy brake to bring you back into regulation. But if you're jamming the brake over and over again, it deteriorates and they start resorting to the handbrake. And you'll have like leaders going, why do I just feel shut down, or I'm spacing out, or I feel shame, or I feel hopeless? That's the end of the line for the nervous system. It's like, you're maxed out, shut down. This is making the invisible visible. When someone sees this, they no longer take it as a personality trait, because it's not a personality trait. I've had people who have gone through trauma, and I talk about, in polyvagal theory, it's known as a heroic response. Why did my body shut down? Because that kept our ancestors alive. Our ancestors would either fight, flight, engage, or freeze and shut down. And as you'll see in the slides, there's a multitude of physiological elements that occur. You go, well, what does this have to do with as well? Well, guess what it drives? This. We've got impacted nervous system function. Everything else starts to suffer. So we start to connect the dots. Yeah. Now, this one you can look at. I love showing this to clients. This looks at the adaptive behaviors that human beings do as animals in each state. So look at this. Flatter, fraternize, funny, fib, flee. This one talks about people pleasing, ego stroking. People go, why do I do that? Because your body's looking for threat. It's in a state of stress. It's not you. That's an adaptive behavior. So you will have the advantage with your clients with a deeper understanding of the nervous system by looking at these behaviors. And the best resource for you to do that, you can look at this vagal tone, is this. Dr. Stephen Porges changed my life. Why do people do ice baths? Why do people do breath work? Why do people do dance? Why do people do yoga? Because it's creating a felt sense of safety by activating this vagus nerve. And this book, you won't see people's behaviors the same. You educate your leaders and your clients with this stuff. Rather than irritation, there's compassion and understanding. This one I'll cover for a few minutes. Another fundamental piece is breath. So this picture on the side shows the change of jaw structure over the use of flour, sugar, and soft foods. Now you go, well, where'd this come from, Peter? If we're breathing through our mouth, we will be sick. If we're breathing through our mouth, we will have less oxygen absorption throughout the body. And what this is showing is that our facial structures have changed so that we are more predisposed towards breathing through the mouth. This is creating all sorts of illnesses, heart disease, fibromyalgia, digestive issues, because there's a chronic low level of oxygen across the body. So for sake of time, you can look at heart math. This is something where it's science, guys. You can do this with a client. Focus on your heart, breathe in for 5, out for 5, in for 5, out for 5. Bring to mind a regenerative emotion. Yeah. So what we'll do, feel free to close your eyes for a moment. Feet planted on the floor, piece of string tied to the top of your head, pulling you towards the ceiling. Bringing your awareness to the nose, observing the breath. And I'll invite you to bring your left hand over your heart. And with your left hand over your heart on the center of your chest, with breathing through the nose, starting to breathe gently into your heart. Imagining the breath is flowing behind your hand through your heart as you breathe in, breathing through your heart. And as you breathe out, breathing through your heart. Breathing in, breath through the heart. Breath out, breathing through your heart. Breath in, breathing through your heart. Breath out, breathing through your heart. 2 more. Breath in, through your heart. Breath out, through your heart. Breath in, through your heart. Breath out, through your heart. Returning to normal breathing, bringing to mind something that you can be grateful for. Who is a person? Where is a place? What is an experience that you can feel deeply grateful for? Maybe someone that you love. Maybe a place that you've been. Maybe an experience that you've had. And as that comes to mind, I'd like you to breathe and feel grateful for that now. That gratitude for that person or place or experience that comes to mind. Breathing a feeling of gratitude through your heart. Perhaps gently having a smile on your face as you're breathing through your heart. Relaxing your hand down, bringing your awareness back into the body, just noticing how you feel. And taking your time, moving slowly, only when you're ready, allowing your eyes to ever so softly start to crack open as you become aware of your sense of sight, your sense of being back here now. Welcome back, team. It's beautiful to access a state of gratitude because what happens? The brain and the heart move into a state of coherence. This isn't woo-woo la-la stuff. This is science. Now, I did that very quickly with you, but for a client, if they're in a state of arousal, as I showed here, they're in arousal, you take them into breath like this. So I do breathing coaching. We can bring their heart and brain into coherence. So that's another type of breathing. You can look at this yourself, team. They're not meant to be breathing through the mouth. It's very simple, but you can look at the science. I've got resources right here. This book, you'll wear mouth tape for the rest of your life. And this will give you the exercises that you can do yourself, that you can then share with your people. Something to look at yourself, tiny habits. This is the systems and skill sets. You can look at this on the slide deck. This is where, they don't want it enough. Have you built it in a tiny habit manner? And hand it over to you, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Peter. I'm absolutely blown away. And I'm sure if I'm feeling blown away, everyone else is feeling blown away. So I guess I'm just going to say, you know, Peter, I'm so impressed with your knowledge. And whilst this can be such a complex topic, you've actually simplified it in a way that we can all really resonate with. And you've made that really clear for us in what you've spoken about. So we really appreciate that. And I remember when we had our preliminary conversations before this session, I think I actually came to you in quite a state of flurry. It was a bit of a stressful day for me. And even just having the conversation with you, you took me to a completely different level. And what we talked about in that session as well was how you serve others. And I have to say, you've been incredibly generous with your knowledge and your time today. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of everyone here today, and we are so, so grateful. I love that connection of mind, body, and coaching. And I also come back to the constructionism and the reductionism. I love that part, considering the whole part or just looking at one part. And as coaches, you know, one of the things we have to do as a coach is to not make assumptions or take somebody on our own agenda. We have to really draw that out of them. And I think what this has done is, with the tools that this brings to us, is it encourages us to open up our minds to the other arts of possibilities that could be going on for those clients. I think that's really, really powerful. And I love the way that you do the three pillars of your new paradigm method and how that all works together. And I also took away the DIMU, the DMU, the deep, insightful, meaningful, and understanding. I think that's amazing in terms of the coaches. And I'm just going to share something very quickly with you. And I just reflected. You know, in 2012, I started coaching and became an executive coach through the IECL in Australia, and part of it, you know, became an ICF accredited coach with the International Coach Federation. In fact, ended up on the board with the ICFA, and we did conferences and all sorts of things. But that was 11 years ago now, and it's actually taken me until 2019, which was pretty much 6 years later, to fully step into the vision that I had of owning my own coaching business. And now we're in 2023. I've been throwing myself into this business for the last 4 years. And whilst it's grown exponentially, I did look back and I thought, you know, what's really helped me get to this point in my business? And if I could have done anything differently or could have leveraged anything, what would it have been? And coming to these sorts of webinars is one of those things, but it's taken a long time to get these streamlined, and I have the support of Anne as well today. But you know, the detail of editing, understanding how to edit the programs, how to put on these things, how to even have the audience that is available to come to these events and that we can share amongst our communities as well. So a few things that I realized that were really important were having access into a trusted demographic of my ideal client personas, where I could leverage the great work of others that could give me that soft introduction. The other thing was to be able to get together with a partner that has a strong brand that could promote my niche services to their clients. And also the ability to leverage that trusted brand to be able to present to an audience of potential clients, just as Peter's doing tonight. And the ability to bypass that intense learning, I was saying, the technology that you have to learn in order to bring these things to life. So you can bypass all of that. That was incredibly time consuming and a big learning curve. And then a couple of other things, having a community of like-minded coaches that support each other. And also primarily, how do I reduce the number of hours that I need to work, but to get more revenue from that? So this is what we recognize now with people that we're working with, that we can help to be that platform to accelerate those types of hurdles and get you to a level in your business where you can actually achieve those goals. We continue to do these webinars, and they're all free, and you can jump onto the webinars link as well, register for anything else that you see of interest. We've actually got one coming up on the 23rd of May, and this is specifically for coaches. It's going to knock your socks off. So by attending that session, that we've never ever done this before. This is the, you know, Peter's been generous today, absolutely, and we're going to have to match that, because that's what we've got to do. So we're talking about next session, we're going to be taking you through our flagship leadership program. And we have 2 levels of that program. You can do the standard level or you can do the practitioner program. And to do the practitioner program, you literally come away as a certified practitioner for that program. It's valued at $4,500 Australian dollars. $4,500 Australian dollars, and never, ever, ever before have we ever given that away. But if you come along to that webinar, you're going to have a chance to win access to that and become a certified practitioner. And now I think we're all completely super excited about that. We're super excited about everything we've heard from Peter today. It's been absolutely mind-blowing, because I think it's a game changer, totally. To join me in thanking Peter so much, because you've given us your amazing gifts tonight, and we are incredibly grateful. And thank you all for joining this session, and I hope you can go into the rest of your day or your evening knowing that you are furnished with so much more knowledge now that is just going to change your lives and your clients' lives going into the future. So Peter, thank you so much.
Thank you.